I was really way out of my depth actually in terms of the role and trying to navigate this new role with a huge amount of responsibility for people across DNEG, and to balance that with my role at home, and I just couldn't do it, and it had a big effect on my mental health, and ultimately kind of led to me being really burnt out.
Welcome to Uplift and Elevate. This is our Uplift Her guest podcast series that shares courageous journeys of individuals getting an honest look into their life, their struggles, successes, and how they broke down barriers to get where they are today. We are Amy and Christina and believe honest conversations can help give you the elevation and empowerment to write your own success story. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Sophie Maydon. Sophie has spent the early part of her career in one of the biggest VFX houses, supporting the company through one of its major growth phases by leading its large-scale recruitment team. But over 5 years ago, she founded Pixel Talent, where her and her team focus on matching hundreds of people with the right company. They're now a global team of 6 and a regular go-to for many companies and individuals across VFX, animation, and creative industries. With 3 children of her own, Pixel Talent is led from the front with Sophie's absolute passion for supporting working families and helping companies create more sustainable talent practices. Welcome, Sophie, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Amy and Christina. It's lovely to be here.
Great to have you. So let's start at the beginning. What's some of the early context that you can share that helps us understand your early life and how that's shaped who you are today?
So I grew up in the UK, and my dad lived abroad. My mum mainly brought me up on her own, so she's been a hugely kind of inspiring figure in my life. I went to school and enjoyed school. I think I was pretty social more than anything. Didn't really sort of understand the importance of applying myself to the academic side of things as much as I probably could do. But I loved school. I really loved arts, sort of art, music, drama, etc. And then went on to uni and studied sociology and anthropology, so kind of the study of people.
Wow.
And also did a bit of kind of combined arts subjects as well, history of art, etc. And then left uni not really knowing what I wanted to do. Had got okay grades, enough to sort of be able to go out into the job market, look to, just trying to find a sort of starting opportunity within an organisation, and I ended up working within the public sector at a tribunal called the Competition Appeal Tribunal, who dealt with competition law. So most of the people working there were kind of barristers, lawyers, judges, and I did HR, recruitment, a little bit, office management, and organised events for them. And had a great experience there, kind of like a lovely family, but quite a small organisation and not necessarily sort of within a field that I was particularly interested in. So then I looked to try and, find something that I felt was going to be more challenging for me and within an area that I was more interested in. So went for a interview at DNEG to work in visual effects, and I guess that was sort of the start of my career within the industry.
Amazing. Interestingly, did you have any role models when you were growing up?
I mean, I think definitely my mum, who I've already mentioned. As I said, my dad was abroad, so it was mainly just me and her. And my mum is an incredibly hardworking woman. All the women in her family have been. And she grew up in a working class family, left school at 16, didn't have tons of opportunities, was obsessed with fashion, and made her way to London, the streets of London, and sort of started working in fashion and retail, which is not what she's ended up in. I think, you know, she as a person is not necessarily aware of how smart and capable she is, but has always really applied herself to everything that she's done, and is also, you know, an incredibly kind and loyal friend. And because that, has a lot of amazing women in her life who have forged, as it so happens, like really successful careers. So from a young age, I was kind of surrounded by women, and all working women, and so really, you know, had a lot of role models in that sense of understanding that women can achieve. I think, you know, in hindsight, or sort of reflecting on that, I guess most of my mum's friends didn't have children, and
Wow.
I can certainly see now that she made a lot of sacrifices in terms of her career, where they were able to perhaps forge further into things by, you know, she was looking after me, working part time, and you know, not necessarily pushing with the same sort of ambition because of that, because, you know, she had someone at home to look after. But she, yeah, she's been an amazing role model for me.
Um, what are some of the biggest challenges you believe you faced earlier in your career?
I think that I guess one of the sort of early big challenges was my move into VFX, which I've already mentioned. And I think I went for the interview at DNEG not knowing anything about visual effects or animation at all, but thinking it sounded quite cool, and really enjoyed the conversations that I had throughout that interview process, with the women who then became my bosses, and I think I probably wasn't particularly prepared for just how, you know, much of a big change it would be coming into a company like DNEG, not knowing anything about the industry, not really understanding what the roles were or how it all tied together, and also navigating what's quite a challenging environment. You know, the business, I guess, was about 300 people at that point. They just brought in John Carter of Mars was the big project, and they were going through hyper growth. And so not only was I coming into an industry that I didn't know a huge amount about, but also trying to help a business navigate that incredibly busy time, you know, without a huge amount of kind of organizational structure. We didn't have any systems. We had a really tiny team. And so, uh, you know, the first year or so, just really trying to get up to speed with what did all of this mean. I was amazed by it and absolutely loved the people, but trying to, you know, gather the information that I needed from people to be successful when they were really busy, was particularly hard. And I think once I'd got up to speed with that a little bit more, I then had the opportunity to progress into a management position at DNEG. And again, that was a huge challenge for me. I was pretty young. I was promoted over people in the team who were older and had more experience than me, and I had great sort of role models in terms of managers within the organisation to learn from, but trying to work out, you know, how you look after a team, support people, inspire people, make them successful, and how you do that in your own way, with your own sort of style, I think is, you know, definitely challenging. So I think, you know, my first few years at DNEG, I would have said, were my first sort of real career challenge. But I think for me, probably the biggest challenge in my career has been navigating having children and working. So I had my first child when I was 28, and then another one sort of 20 months later. And I'd always wanted to have children, and I definitely wanted to continue working, and it wasn't an option for me not to be working. I took about 9 months off with my first son, and which I was really lucky to do. But I definitely found kind of coming back to work really challenging. I was in a global role, working with teams across different time zones. I'd been out for nearly a year. The industry is incredibly fast paced, and the company was really fast paced at that time, as it still is. And so a huge amount had kind of changed in terms of the business and my role. But also, I now had these two roles, and I was trying to work out how to be a working parent and balance those two things, and how my childcare was going to work, and how I was going to continue to do my role in the way that I had done before, which actually I learned is not really possible, because everything has changed for you within your world. And then I was relatively quickly pregnant with my second child, went off again, came back to an even bigger role. I was then looking after recruitment globally, as well as HR and PR for the organisation. I only took about 5 months off that time. I think that I didn't really want to have too much time out, because I didn't want to miss too much, and and also it was really, really hard looking after two children under two at home, so I rushed back to work. I think I found it. I was really way out of my depth, actually, in terms of the role, and trying to navigate this new role with a huge amount of responsibility for people across DNEG, and to balance that with my role at home. And I just couldn't do it, and it had a big effect on my mental health, and ultimately kind of led to me being really burnt out and leaving DNEG, which I hadn't ever wanted to do, hadn't wanted to do at that time. And so it was really hard for me to leave. And I sort of took a month off, did some home house project type stuff, and then realised I didn't really want to leave the industry, and I really missed the people, and I really missed the work, and so I set up Pixel, and it initially I was kind of reaching out to different industry contacts that I'd made, and just trying to see whether there was legs in the business, and it's grown from there. So we're 5 years in, the team is 6 people. I work with a really wonderful team, and we've got great sort of clients, and we work globally, and we do really interesting work. And so the challenges that I had at DNEG, particularly around the sort of being a working parent side of things, have ultimately led me to my business today. So, at which I'm much happier in. So I think it was worth it for sure. But those challenges were really hard at the time. So.
Can you share a little bit more about your experience growing that business, and also what drives your passion to continue?
When I set up Pixel, I thought, well, I'm sure there's a gap for me to sort of support these businesses, having had a lot of experience, within the industry, and really understanding the different types of not only roles and responsibilities, but the types, the sort of culture and values of different visual effects studios, and the types of people that they were looking for. So I started working with different studios through contacts that I'd made over the years, and either supporting teams when they were super busy, or with these really specialist roles. And I also work with a few kind of startup either divisions of a business or organisations, when they were looking to bring in their sort of first 40 hires. And the business has really grown from there. I've been lucky to bring in a really experienced team. All of my team came mainly from kind of in-house, either heads of or manager or global positions. I think we've got about 100 years of hiring experience in the industry between us, and we are really passionate about the industry and the people in it. I think the industry is in some ways unique in that you've got these different skill sets with super creative people, very very technical people, amazing producers, and that brings a whole mix of kind of skills and personalities, and makes it a sort of really interesting field to operate in terms of the people, and that's kind of what's kept me in the industry and kept me wanting to work with people is their kind of stories and personalities, and also their passion. People work in this industry because they're really passionate about the work, and the work is incredible and inspiring, and it's hard not to sort of want to stay in an industry where people are really really passionate about it. And I think the industry as it is now, we go through really hard times, and we're certainly in a really hard period for so many people right now, in terms of the strikes and the job losses that are happening as a result of that. But the sort of passion for the industry and the work remains, I think, with with people within the industry, and so and also I think companies go through so much change in terms of the technology and innovation that exists within the visual effects and animation industry, and that's incredibly inspiring as well. People are always pushing for more, and that makes it a really exciting field to operate within.
Yeah, it definitely keeps you on your toes. Even more so these days with AI. It's like, wow, there's like a change coming every single day that you try to keep up with. But no, it's exhilarating.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you mentioned you've got 3 wonderful children. And one thing we discuss is the penalty of motherhood. Can you share with us what your experience has been and what you've seen across the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess it's important to point out that or stress that the motherhood penalty is not something that's exclusive to the VFX industry. It exists across all industries. So yeah, it's a common experience with mothers in all different areas, and I think I've been lucky enough to kind of carve out a working pattern that generally works well for me and my family. My business is really hard work, but I can sort of make it work in terms of my family life. But I think for lots of women, it isn't possible to kind of leave companies or work independently. And in my professional and in my personal life as well, I've seen a lot of women, very capable women, leaving their jobs once they've had children, or being absolutely miserable in their jobs as well. And I've become more interested in sort of why this is happening, or more interested, I guess, in sort of looking into the data around it, or finding out more about it. And I think, yeah, I guess the other thing that I had seen happening a bit more within the industry, and certainly when I was at DNEG, is quite rightly companies focusing more readily on their DEI or DNI or whatever you want to call it initiatives, and trying to bring more women into the industry through grassroots initiatives, and then progressing more women into leadership positions, but there being quite a big drop off at the sort of middle management level in terms of the number of women, and kind of becoming more interested in, well, why is that happening? And does that have something to do with the fact that 80% of women are having children and in the UK, and where does this come from? So I think we talked about before this call the motherhood penalty, which is a term sort of coined by sociologists around the disadvantages that mothers face in terms of pay, their perceived competence, and benefits compared to childless women and men. And the motherhood penalty is, as I understand it, is really directly relevant to the gender pay gap. And in fact, the data sort of suggests that 80% of the gender pay gap is down to the motherhood penalty, and that's due to, I hope I'm getting the stats for this right, a sort of 60% drop in earnings for women or mothers compared to fathers in the 10 years following the birth of their first child. And so yeah, I think, it's definitely something that's super important, and something that I've become really interested in terms of looking at, and I know that it isn't just purely about, becoming a mother that are the challenges for women, but certainly that it should be something that we should be talking about.
Thank you for listening to Uplift and Elevate. This was episode 1 with Sophie Maydon. Stay tuned for part 2, where we deep dive into the issues around gender roles when it comes to working parents. And we discuss the importance of open conversations and how representation can help companies design roles and support to be more effective for everyone. Our goal at Uplift Her is to develop effective and lasting change by focusing on building a strong community, providing essential career resources and effective mentoring programs. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, follow us on Instagram, and reach out if you're interested in getting involved and learning more about our work.